The morning sun spilled its golden light across the quaint garden where Michelle was to marry Joshua. The air buzzed with the whispers of guests and the subtle fragrance of roses and jasmine. Michelle, dressed in a flowing gown of ivory, stood nervously before the mirror, her reflection a blend of excitement and anxiety. Her mother, Miz D, approached her, expression a complex tapestry of maternal concern and forced cheerfulness. "You look beautiful, Michelle," she said softly. Michelle managed a weak smile. "Thank you, Mom. I just wish. I wish you'd feel happier about this." Dee sighed, her eyes reflecting a storm of unspoken thoughts. "I want your happiness above all, Michelle. I just hope you're making the right." Before Michelle could respond, her bridesmaids entered, bubbling with excitement, effectively cutting off the delicate conversation. The room filled with chatter and laughter, a temporary veil over the underlying tensions. As the ceremony commenced, Michelle walked down the aisle, her heart fluttering like a caged bird. The garden transformed into a magical realm, with guests turning to admire her, but her eyes were fixed on Joshua. He stood at the altar, handsome in his suit, his smile beaming like a lighthouse in a stormy sea. "Wow, you look amazing," Joshua whispered as Michelle reached him, his eyes shining with emotion. "So do you," she whispered back. The officiant began, and the couple exchanged vows, their voices steady but laden with the weight of the promises they were making. "I, Michelle, take you, Joshua, to be my husband," they said as they exchanged rings. Michelle's gaze met her mother's. Dee's face was a complex blend of sorrow and resignation, but there was also a subtle glimmer of hope in her eyes. The officiant pronounced them husband and wife, and as they kissed, the crowd erupted in cheers. For a moment, all doubts and warnings faded into the background, overshadowed by the joy of the moment. At the reception, laughter and music filled the air. Miz D, holding a glass of champagne, approached the newlyweds. "Joshua, take care of my daughter. She's all I have," she said, her voice laced with a mother's protective instinct. Joshua nodded, his expression serious. "I will, Mrs. Dust. I love her more than anything." Michelle felt a surge of love for both her mother and her new husband as they danced under the string lights, surrounded by friends and family. She allowed herself to be swept away by the magic of the day, hoping against hope that the future would be as bright and beautiful as the moment they were in. Soon, their first child, Finian, was born. The initial bliss of marriage began to wane as the days turned into months. The once cozy apartment Michelle and Joshua shared felt increasingly cramped, not just in space but in spirits. Michelle, now back at work and managing their toddler Finian, often found herself overwhelmed. One evening, she returned home tired from work to find Joshua on the sofa, absorbed in a video game. Toys were scattered across the floor, and Finian was drawing on the living room wall. "Joshua, could you have at least tidied up a bit?" Michelle's voice was a mix of frustration and fatigue. Joshua barely glanced away from his screen. "Hey, I'm in the middle of something important here," he muttered. Michelle sighed, picking up. "It's just, I could use a little help around here." Their conversations increasingly took on this pattern, Michelle expressing her needs, Joshua responding with indifference. It wasn't just the household chores, it was his general lack of ambition that started to gnaw. One weekend, as they lay in bed, Michelle decided to confront the issue. "Joshua, we need to talk about your job situation," she began tentatively. I know, I'm looking," Joshua replied, his tone defensive. "It's been months, Josh. We need stability, especially with Finian and Dee with the new baby on the way." Joshua turned away, a silent signal that the conversation was over. Michelle's heart sank. Her concerns were valid, but they seemed to only drive a wedge between them. The situation reached a boiling point during a family dinner at Ms. Dust's house. The air was tense as they all sat around the dining table. Miss Dust, ever the straightforward one, decided to address the elephant in the room. Joshua, what are your plans for finding a job? You can't depend on Michelle's income forever, she said, her tone more of concern than accusation. Joshua's face flushed with anger. I don't see how that's any of your business, Mrs. D. It is my business when I see my daughter exhausted from work and taking care of the household alone, Mrs. Dust shot back. Michelle, feeling the weight of the escalating tension, intervened. Mom, please, but the dam had broken. Joshua stood up abruptly, knocking his chair back. I don't need this, he snapped. I'm not a child to be lectured. Michelle reached out, trying to calm him. Josh, please, let's just talk about this later. But Joshua was already grabbing his coat. I'll be back when I feel like it, he said, leaving Michelle and Ms. Dust in stunned silence as the door slammed shut. Ms. Dust reached across the table, taking her daughter's hand. Michelle, you deserve better than this. Michelle looked away, tears brimming in her eyes. I just don't know what to do anymore, Mom. The rift had opened a chasm of unspoken words and unresolved tensions, leaving Michelle to wonder if the love that had once seemed unbreakable was now beginning to crumble under the weight of reality. Some more time passed when Michelle found out that she was pregnant. As Michelle's pregnancy progressed, the walls of their home seemed to close in further, echoing with the growing tension between her and Joshua. With each passing day, Michelle's hope for a change dwindled, overshadowed by the reality of her husband's continued apathy. One chilly evening, Michelle sat at the kitchen table, sorting through bills and trying to balance their finances. The numbers weren't adding up, and her brow furrowed in worry. Joshua lounged in the living room, the sound of a televised football game punctuating the silence. Joshua, we need to talk about our finances, Michelle called out, her voice laced with concern. In a minute, the game's almost over, Joshua responded, not taking his eyes off the screen. She waited, but patience wasn't her ally that night. She walked into the living room, her hands trembling slightly with a mix of anger and fear. Joshua, we're running into debt. We need to figure this out, and we need to do it now. Joshua sighed, muting the television. What do you want me to do, Michelle? I've been looking for work. It's not like jobs are just falling into my lap. It's not just about the job, Josh. It's about us, our family. Finian needs us, and soon there'll be another baby. We can't go on like this, Michelle's voice cracked, revealing her vulnerability. Joshua stood up, his frustration evident. I'm doing what I can, Michelle. What more do you want from me? I want you to be present, to be a partner in this. It feels like I'm doing this all alone, Michelle pleaded, tears welling in her eyes. Joshua's expression softened momentarily, but he was quick to shield his vulnerability. I can't give you what I don't have, Michelle. The conversation ended there, but the tension lingered thick and suffocating. Days turned into weeks, and the distance between them grew. Michelle often found solace in conversations with her mother, Ms. Dust, who, despite her initial reservations about Joshua, tried to offer support. During one such visit, Ms. Dust watched Michelle, her face etched with worry. You're carrying the weight of the world on your shoulders, my dear Michelle. Michelle, cradling her swollen belly, managed a weak smile. I just want to believe things will get better. Hope is a powerful thing, but sometimes we need to face reality. You can't force Joshua to be someone he's not, Ms. Dust said gently, her words a mix of wisdom and concern. I know, Mom, but I can't give up on him, on us. I have to believe he'll come around, Michelle responded, her voice a whisper of both defiance and desperation. As Michelle left her mother's house that day, the sky darkened, and a gust of wind sent leaves swirling around her. It felt symbolic, mirroring the turmoil in her heart. The storm was brewing, and she knew it was only a matter of time before it broke. The tension in Michelle and Joshua's home had escalated to a palpable level, akin to the heavy, charged air before a storm. The arrival of their second child was imminent, but instead of joy, there was a sense of impending doom. One fateful evening, as thunder rumbled in the distance, the fragile peace they had been clinging to shattered. Joshua had come home late again, his footsteps heavy and his mood darker than the night outside. Michelle, sitting in the dimly lit living room, her pregnant belly a testament to her vulnerability, looked up as Joshua entered. "Josh, we need to talk," she began, her voice tinged with exhaustion. Joshua, rubbing his temples, replied tersely, "Not now, Michelle. I've had a rough day." "It's always a rough day for you. When will it be our day? When will you see that we're struggling here?" Michelle's voice rose in frustration. Joshua's expression hardened. "What do you want from me? I'm trying my best. Your best is staying out late and avoiding us, your best." Michelle's voice cracked. Before Joshua could retort, the front door opened, and in walked Miz Dust, her face etched with concern. She had a key to their house and often came unannounced, a point of contention for Joshua. "What's going on here, Miss D?" asked Miz Dust, sensing the tension. "Nothing that concerns you," Joshua snapped, his patience worn thin. "It does concern me when I see my daughter and grandchildren suffering because of your irresponsibility," Ms. Dust fired back. Joshua turned to Michelle, anger flashing in his eyes. "You told her?" Michelle, taken aback, stammered, "No, Josh, it's not like that. She's just worried, we all are. The only thing she's ever done is judge me." Joshua retorted, his voice rising, "Someone needs to tell you the truth. You're a burden to my daughter, a grown man who can't hold a job or take care of his family." That was the breaking point. Joshua's face turned red with rage. "I don't have to listen to this," he yelled, heading towards the door. "Josh, please," Michelle pleaded, tears streaming down her face. "Don't go like this." But Joshua was beyond listening. He slammed the door behind him, leaving a deafening silence in his wake. Ms. Dust moved to comfort her daughter, but Michelle recoiled. "Mom, look what you've done. You've pushed him away." "Michelle," Ms. Dust started, but Michelle interrupted her. "Just leave, Mom, please. I can't deal with this right now." Ms. Dust, her heart heavy with sorrow, complied. As she left, she looked back at her daughter sitting alone in the dim light, a picture of distress. The storm outside mirrored the one in Michelle's heart. Thunder roared, and lightning illuminated the room in brief, stark flashes. Michelle wrapped her arms around her belly, her tears mingling with the raindrops beating against the window. The man she loved had walked out into the storm, and she was left alone, wondering if the love that had once seemed so strong could weather the tempest it now faced. The days following Joshua's departure were marked by a deafening silence in the house. Michelle moved through her daily routines mechanically, her heart heavy with a myriad of emotions, betrayal, sadness, and a deep sense of loss. One evening, as Michelle sat in the living room, the silence was broken by the sound of Finian, their toddler, asking, "Mommy, where's Daddy?" Michelle looked into her son's innocent eyes, searching for words that could explain the inexplicable. "Daddy needed some time alone, sweetie," she answered, her voice trembling. "But I miss him." Finian's lower lip quivered, his simple words piercing Michelle's already fragile heart. "I know, baby. I miss him too." Michelle pulled Finian into her arms, her own tears hidden as she comforted her son. The following weeks were a blur. Michelle's mother, Ms. Dust, despite being pushed away, made attempts to reach out. She called one afternoon, her voice hesitant over the phone. "Mel, how are you holding up, dear?" Michelle's response was lukewarm. "I'm managing, Mom. We're managing." "Michelle, I'm sorry. I never meant to push Joshua away. I was just worried for you both." Ms. Dust's voice cracked with emotion. "Mom, I can't talk about this now. Please, just let's leave it, Michelle replied, a lump forming in her throat as the call ended. Michelle felt a renewed sense of isolation. Her mother's intentions, though well-meaning, had only served to widen the gap in her already strained marriage. Nights were the hardest. The empty bed beside her was a constant reminder of Joshua's absence. She often found herself awake, staring into the darkness, her mind replaying the events that led to their separation. One night, as she lay awake, she whispered to the silence, "Joshua, why did you have to leave?" But the silence offered no answers, only a hollow echo of her own pain. The day of the baby's arrival came sooner than expected. Michelle went into labor in the early hours of the morning, alone and scared. She called Ms. Dust, who immediately rushed over to the hospital. As Michelle labored, Ms. Dust held her hand, offering words of encouragement. "You're strong, Michelle. You can do this," Ms. Dust said, her voice steady. Through the pain and exhaustion, Michelle found a reservoir of strength she didn't know she had. And then, with one final push, her daughter was born. As the baby's cries filled the room, Michelle's tears flowed, tears of pain, relief, and bittersweet joy. As she held her newborn daughter for the first time, Michelle whispered, "Hello, my little one. It's just you and me now." Ms. Dust, standing beside her, added softly, "And me, Michelle. I'm here too." In that hospital room, a new chapter began for Michelle, one of a single mother facing an uncertain future. Yet in the eyes of her newborn daughter, she found a glimmer of hope, a reason to believe that even in the midst of life's storms, there is the possibility of new beginnings. Several weeks had passed since the birth of Michelle's daughter, Aloan. The small apartment, once a battleground of emotions, was now filled with the soft coos and cries of the newborn. Michelle, despite the exhaustion, wore a mantle of newfound strength and determination. One afternoon, while Michelle was feeding Aloan, there was a knock on the door. Her heart skipped a beat. Setting Aloan in her crib, she walked to the door with a mix of apprehension and hope. She opened it to find Joshua standing there, his eyes tired but hopeful. "Michelle, can we talk?" Joshua's voice was low, a hint of nervousness in his tone. Michelle hesitated, her emotions a whirlwind. "Okay, but not here. Let's go to the park. Finian can play while we talk." At the park, Finian ran ahead excitedly while Michelle and Joshua found a secluded bench. The air was tense as they sat, the distance of weeks creating an invisible barrier. "Michelle, I'm sorry," Joshua began, breaking the silence. "I've been doing a lot of thinking. I've been an idiot, and I've hurt you and the kids." Michelle looked at him, her expression guarded. "Joshua, sorry doesn't just fix everything. You left us when we needed you most." "I know, and I regret it every single day. I've got a job now, Michelle. It's nothing fancy, but it's a start. I want to be part of your lives again, of our family's life," Joshua pleaded. Michelle's eyes filled with tears, a mix of anger, pain, and a flicker of hope. "Josh, it's not just about the job. It's about us, about trust. How can I trust you won't just leave again when things get tough?" Joshua reached for her hand, but she pulled away. "I understand your hesitation. I messed up, Michelle, but I'm willing to do whatever it takes to earn your trust back." Michelle looked away, her mind a battlefield. Part of her yearned to believe him, to restore the family they once dreamed of, but another part was scared of getting hurt again. "It's not just about us, Joshua. There's Finian and now Aloan. I can't have them go through this again." Joshua nodded, a sense of determination in his eyes. "I know, and I won't let that happen. I want to be there for you and for them. I want to be the husband and father I should have been all along." Michelle took a deep breath, her decision weighing heavily on her heart. "We can try, Joshua, but it's going to take time, and things need to be different." Joshua's face lit up with cautious relief. Thank you, Michelle. I'll do whatever it takes. As they walked back, Michelle watched Finian playing, his laughter a sweet melody in the afternoon air. She then looked down at Aloan, sleeping peacefully in her stroller, her tiny face a beacon of innocence and hope. In that moment, Michelle realized that this was her new beginning, a chance to rebuild not just her marriage, but her family. It would be a journey filled with challenges, but for the first time in a long while, she felt a cautious optimism about the future. As they left the park, Joshua pushing Aloan's stroller and Finian chattering excitedly between them, Michelle felt a sense of completeness. The road ahead was uncertain, but it was a road they would now travel together as a family, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Months had passed since Joshua's return, and the dynamics within the family had shifted. There was a cautious but growing sense of harmony in the household. Michelle, though still guarded, had noticed a genuine change in Joshua. He was more present both physically and emotionally, and had taken up his role in the family with a newfound sense of responsibility. One crisp autumn afternoon, Michelle sat on the porch, a warm cup of tea in her hands, watching Finian and Aloan play in the yard. Ms. Dust arrived, her presence a familiar comfort. "Hello, dear," Ms. Dust greeted, taking a seat beside Michelle. "Hi, Mom. It's good to see you," Michelle replied, her voice reflecting a mix of warmth and weariness. Ms. Dust watched the children play, her eyes lingering on Joshua, who was now actively engaged in a game of catch with Finian. "He's changed, hasn't he?" she remarked softly. Michelle followed her mother's gaze. "Yes, he has. It's like he's finally understood what it means to be a part of this family." "And how do you feel about that, Miss Dust?" her tone gentle yet probing. Michelle sighed, a thoughtful expression crossing her face. "I'm cautiously optimistic, Mom. I want to believe that we can make this work, that we can be a family again. But part of me is still scared of going back to how things were." Ms. Dust reached over, placing her hand over Michelle's. "It's okay to feel that way. But remember, people can change, and it seems Joshua is trying his best." Michelle nodded, her eyes returning to the playful scene before her. "I know, and I'm trying too, for Finian and Aloan and for myself." They sat in silence for a moment, the sounds of laughter and the rustling of leaves filling the air. Then Ms. Dust spoke up again. "You know, I've always been proud of you, Michelle. Proud of your strength and your heart. No matter what happens, I want you to remember that." Michelle smiled, a genuine, heartfelt smile. "Thanks, Mom." As the sun began to set, casting a golden glow over the yard, Michelle felt a sense of peace. The path ahead would have its ups and downs, but she was no longer walking it alone. She had her family beside her, and in her mother, a watchful guardian whose love and support had been her anchor through the storm. The scene before her, bathed in the golden light of the setting sun, was a testament to the resilience of love and family. It was a reminder that even in the face of trials and tribulations, there is always hope for a new beginning. Thanks for watching. How did you find the story? Let me know in the comments below. Remember to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more awesome stories like this. Your feedback and support mean a lot.